As I said, my name is Rachel Giacobozzi. I'm from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence team. When I was asked to put together the MSTIC year in review, I took a look at everything we've published this year, and it was really overwhelming. Like, I understand as an Intel analyst, it can be a lot to try to find what it is that you're supposed to focus on. I mean, just this week, we published a new blog. And a lot of people don't know, but this year, Microsoft tracked over 1,500 threat actors. And we saw almost a 3-time increase in ransomware attacks. So this year, when I decided to put the brief together, I really wanted to focus on what our customers loved this year. So I actually have it broken down into a few different sections. We're going to go over some trends, some nation-state actors, financially motivated threats, tools, techniques, and vulnerabilities. Now, everything I'm going to showcase for you today actually makes up almost nearly 2 million customer views. Let's start with our trends. Now, these trends represent Q3 of this year, which is July through September. And during that 90-day period of time, we took all of the telemetry that we had in our Microsoft Defender products and combined that with our threat intel analysis that is happening across all of our research teams and conducting some pattern recognition to pull out some key items for you guys. So as we look at the threat landscape highlights, a few things really stood out to us. First, commodity tools like bootloader and sliver were still our most prolific tools used by threat actors during that 90-day period of time, and they're most commonly used in ransomware operations. Speaking of ransomware, Black Basta was still our most prevalent ransomware during that period. And Iranian-based nation-state actors like Peach Sandstorm and Mint Sandstorm were our most active. Also, when we look at post-compromise tools, legitimate remote monitoring tools, or RMM tools, and techniques like lol bins are still the majority, are still the key things our threat actors use in the majority of post-compromise techniques. We're going to deep dive into some ransomware. Honestly, throughout the year, in all 3 quarters, our most prolific ransomware-linked actors remain consistent. Groups like Storm 0249 and 0464, who are initial access brokers, remain consistently active throughout the whole year. And they tend to deploy commodity malware and then hand off access to ransomware affiliates who actually deploy the ransomware. And although we had multiple targeted industries throughout the time period, we found that government organizations were still our most targeted. And popular ransomware as a service offerings like Ransom Hub, which is a leak site, remained extremely popular. We're going to look at Black Basta, which was our most popular ransomware during that period. And Black Basta first appeared in the wild in April of 2022. Now, Black Basta is a closed offering, and what that means is that you will not find it openly available as a ransomware as a service. It's only available to the affiliates that are inside that small closed group. What normally happens with a Black Basta infection is that groups like Storm 0450 will deploy Quackbot and then follow up with a secondary malware like Cobalt Strike or System BC or Brute Ratel to gain initial access. And then they'll hand off that initial access to groups like 0826 or 0506, who will then deploy Black Basta on the final targeted systems. Now, this group is known to do double extortion, which is to inflict maximum damage as quickly as possible. So they not only during initial access will start exfiltrating data, they will then encrypt the data, extort the company for the encryption, and then threaten to leak the data that they exfiltrated on a Tor site for a secondary payment. And we've seen ransomware spread through like SMB and the use of remote WMI to launch files and encrypt devices across the network at a faster pace. Now we're going to go to everyone's favorite. We all know you're here for the nation states. I'm actually going to showcase 4 nation state actors that were pretty active this year. And just for awareness, Microsoft defines a nation state actor as actors conducting cyber operations on behalf of or directed by a nation or state line program. So there may be things that we can attribute to the location, but not necessarily attribute to the nation or the state, and you wouldn't find them here in this list. We're gonna start with Twil Typhoon. Twil Typhoon is a China-based threat actor that focuses on espionage. They primarily target government-related organizations around the world. And they're known for targeting victims with malware on removable media or using phishing emails that contain a malicious link or malicious attachment. And they typically deliver remote access Trojans like PlugX or UDisk. And to maintain persistence, we see them use Windows scheduled task. So we're gonna go through one of their campaigns. And in May of 2024, we saw Twil Typhoon conducting a spear phishing campaign. Now these campaigns contained a .msc file, which are the files used in the Microsoft Management Console. Now, legitimate MSC files are used for things like Event Viewer and Device Manager within Windows. Here, the MSC files use the XML format and run within the Management Console. On the screen, you can see an example of the task wizard within the Management Console. And if you see in the parameters section, it's actually the malicious command. So when this is run, the malicious command is automatically run on the victim system. These spear phishing emails contained hyperlinks to reports and press releases and other documents because they targeted government agencies kind of throughout the world. And those links eventually led to the download of PlugX, again, their favorite remote access Trojan. We're gonna move along to Peach Sandstorm. Peach Sandstorm is an Iranian group. They are backed by the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They target satellite communications, oil, gas, and governments, usually in the United States or the United Arab Emirates. They like to use password spray as their initial access vector, and their goal is to facilitate intelligence collection, really to support the Iranian state interests. So if we look at a campaign that they did this year, between April and July of 2024, we saw Peach Sandstorm conduct a long-running intelligence gathering operation. Here, they used LinkedIn and social engineering to gather intelligence against higher education, satellite, and defense sectors throughout this campaign. Once they collected the initial social engineering and had their targets, they then conducted password sprays against VPN providers with a high level of success. Once they were in, they downloaded a new custom multi-stage backdoor named Tickler. Tickler leverages attacker-controlled Azure subscriptions for command and control, and it tends to collect network information from the host and send it to the CT URL. We believe that's used for the threat actor to orient themselves in the network before laterally moving using SMB or RMM tooling. Next, we're gonna move to Russia, and we have Star Blizzard. I know we just put out the blog on Midnight Blizzard, but I figured we'd give you someone new. Star Blizzard's main effort is cloud email compromise for credential theft through spear phishing. And they've been linked to hack and leak campaigns, typically motivated by espionage. And they like to target the UK, the US, Europe, and Ukraine. Now, the big news on Star Blizzard is that in July of 2024, they shifted from using attachments in emails to malicious links in emails, which I know seems like a huge tactic shift, but since the beginning, they've only used attachments in emails, so this was a huge deviation from every other campaign that we've seen from them over the years. And here, their phishing emails are highly personalized, and they impersonate a trusted sender. They send an altered OneDrive file share that contains a clickable link that ends up on an evil Jinx server. The follow-on activity is always adversary in the middle to steal session tokens. Now, this shift between an attachment to a link actually removes some of the detection opportunities through traditional phishing detections. Now, in March of 2024, we actually saw a very similar campaign that used an attachment instead that was highly targeted against US think tanks. And those US think tanks were related to policy in academic circles. Here, we don't have as granular of targeting. Now, both of those cases, Star Blizzard specifically was doing an adversary in the middle attack. So for those that have not heard this, or AITM, it kind of follows the same pattern as a man-in-the-middle attack, but this is using a proxy service. So what happens is the victim will get a spear phishing email that usually contains a link. And that link will take them to what looks like a legitimate site, but is actually a phishing site that is attacker controlled. And they'll put in their credentials, and then the attacker will actually proxy between that phishing site and the legitimate site, adding in those legitimate credentials. Now, a lot of these sites have MFA enabled or some kind of follow-on authentication enabled, which is great. And basically what the threat actor will do is they will proxy back that MFA request to the victim, wait for the victim to provide whatever additional authentication is needed, and then proxy that again back over to the legitimate website. This allows the threat actor who is sitting in the middle to steal the session token at the legitimate website. And normally what the threat actor sees then is that they will, or what the victim will see then is a redirection to a totally legitimate, oftentimes not related website. Meanwhile, the threat actor will take that session token and either use it at a later time for initial access into whatever system they're targeting, or we do see them resell those at that access too. Our last threat actor here for nation state that we're going to look at is Moonstone Sleet. Now, Moonstone Sleet is a North Korean threat actor, and like a lot of North Korean threat actors, they primarily target IT services and software companies. They like to use social engineering for data exfiltration and financial gain. Now, the most interesting thing about Moonstone Sleet is they actually developed a fully functioning game called The Tank War. It actually looks pretty good, which I'm kind of sad about. They then, after developing this game, sent out highly targeted emails posing as a software developer looking for investments in development help. And they post this game as an NFT-enabled play-to-earn game that's available on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's actually playable from their website. Unfortunately, it's not just a game. It actually includes a custom malware loader that we track as UEload. And that malware loader is used for network and user discovery, browser data collection, and access to the LSAS for dumping credentials. So unfortunately, it is malicious, but it does look like a really cool game. Now, Moonstone Sleet, like some other North Korean actors, especially this year, we've heard it in the news, they have a TTP where they will apply for remote software jobs to infiltrate organizations, and they use stolen, forged, or rented identifications, or identities. Rented identities. I remember when I first heard this, I was like, oh wait, but how does that work? Like, there's a lot of checks that are involved here. Like, it just doesn't seem like it would be something that could go unchecked at a company for a long time, but it's actually a pretty sophisticated operation. So once they are hired, they will actually use a proxy where they will send all of their equipment to a proxy that is located in whatever location is appropriate for that company. Then they use RMM tooling and VPN services and proxies to connect into their legitimate company equipment from North Korea. And they kind of get away with this because they try their best to not have to turn on a camera or not go into meetings, never talk on a phone. And when they have to, we've seen a few different ways that they've gotten around this, either by using the proxy that's sitting in the United States to sit in on their behalf, or there was some external reporting where they were actually able to show that they used AI, not only for imaging but for voice, to pretend to be in that meeting. Now, it might seem silly, and a lot of people might think, like, what is the purpose of this? But the majority of this remote IT worker program is used for financial gain and extortion of data. Like, you're going to take data away because you belong to the network. It's a lot harder for companies to determine that that's exfiltration versus maybe a data loss prevention program. All right, next, we're going to talk about financially motivated threats. And I know as an analyst, the first thing that comes to my mind is ransomware. But Microsoft actually tracks more than just ransomware as financially motivated threats. So large-scale phishing campaigns whose end purpose is some form of financial gain, as well as like business email compromise, and of course ransomware, are all included in our financially motivated threats. And although I am going to showcase 2 ransomware actors, their TTPs have evolved over the years to be almost as advanced and prolific as some of our nation-state actors. I'm also going to showcase a phishing as a service campaign that we saw. So let's start with Octotempest. I feel like this is probably our most public financially motivated threat actor. Octotempest targets a variety of industries. It includes telecom, finance, retail, IT, and they use a variety of TTPs to navigate the complex hybrid environments, so they can not only navigate on-prem environments, but cloud, and also companies that have hybrid. And their objectives vary depending on the target. For example, in May of 2024, we saw Octotempest target Nuance Communications via SMS phishing for initial access into that telecom provider. We've also seen them evolve over the years. So in early 2022, Microsoft saw Octotempest monetize their intrusions for the first time by selling SIM swaps to other criminal groups. And they conducted social engineering and data collection in order to facilitate these swaps. We did see them perform some account takeovers and steal cryptocurrency towards the end of that period. And they sold access to the cryptocurrency to other actors. In late 2022 to early 2023, we saw them change their targeting. So now they're looking at telecommunications, email, and technology organizations, which we still see them target today. They used phishing and social engineering to conduct a mass password reset campaign, targeting customers that allowed them to conduct data exfiltration. And then from mid-2023 to now, we see them expand their targeting again into gaming, hospitality, retail, MSPs, finance, manufacturing, the list could go on. And with that expansion of targeting, they expanded their capabilities by becoming a BlueHat ransomware affiliate, which means that they exclusively use BlueHat ransomware. Now, they leverage the data theft and encryption for extortion. They are part of the double extortion ecosystem that exists in ransomware today. Vanilla Tempest is another ransomware actor. They're known to deploy ransomware and conduct that double extortion, just like Octotempest. But they disproportionately target the US education sector, but we have seen them in this year target US hospitals and local governments, as well as retail organizations. The interesting thing about Vanilla Tempest is that their payload has evolved over the years. They started as a BlueHat ransomware affiliate, then they moved to Quantum Locker, to Zeppelin, Riceta, and now we see them deploying INC ransomware. They also leverage publicly known and disclosed vulnerabilities for initial access and elevation of privilege in their target systems. We've seen them use backdoors like SystemBC, Porter, and Supper to establish persistence and create a way for lateral movement during their initial access processes. We're actually going to go through that. This year, we saw Vanilla Tempest target hospitals in the US with INC ransomware. In August of 2024, we believe that this ransomware infection started and originated with a bootloader infection that was using search engine optimization poisoning. And while bootloader is a multi-stage payload distribution malware that's been active since 2018, and Microsoft tracks bootloader infections as Storm 0494. So we believe 0494 did SEO poisoning, had bootloader, compromise the targets. That's the initial access vector. Then they handed over that initial access to Vanilla Tempest. Now, Vanilla Tempest downloaded INC ransomware at US hospitals. After the ransomware was downloaded, they then followed on with Super Backdoor, which was used for discovery, establishing command and control, and exfiltration, as well as the legitimate tool AnyDesk, which is an RMM tool. Here they use that for persistence and to deploy additional malicious tooling so that those tools weren't going directly to disk, but instead being using a secondary piece of legitimate tooling for it. And finally, they deployed Mega, which is a data sync tool that they use for exfiltration of data, and they use it to perform lateral movement through RDP. The last thing we're going to go over in the financial space is a large-scale SharePoint campaign or SharePoint phishing campaign that was backed by the DATSEC phishing as a service page. So in August of 2024, this phishing campaign, which masqueraded as SharePoint document notifications, used the DATSEC phishing as a service platform to conduct adversary in the middle campaigns. So there was no malware here. This was just all initial access and sealing of session tokens. They used that phishing as a service platform to collect credentials and authentication tokens. This campaign had customized emails from compromised user accounts, and they targeted their victims with customized messages that were themed to their profession. These messages included a fake multi-factor authentication check, as well as a Cloudflare CAPTCHA check. And we believe that both of these checks collected background information, as well as provided threat actors a way to prevent security solutions from detecting that phishing infrastructure. Automation can't detect it if it has to hit the CAPTCHA first. I guess it does protect against robots. Now, we've seen a lot of tools used by threat actors, and I'm going to highlight two tools. One of the tools is a bespoke piece of malware that was custom developed and only used by a specific set of threat actors. And the other one I'm going to go over is a openly available tool that is used by offensive security teams, red teams, and pen testing teams currently, because it's a legitimate testing platform. We're also going to go through a technique that we saw this year that was used by several threat actors. We're going to start with Goose Egg. Goose Egg is a bespoke tool used by Forest Blizzard. Forest Blizzard is a Russian nation-state actor that's been active since 2010. Now, Forest Blizzard targets government, energy, transportation in US, Europe, the Middle East. And Goose Egg exploits a vulnerability, specifically CVE 2022-38028, which is a privilege escalation vulnerability in Windows Print Spooler. And part of the post-compromise activities, this tool is used as part of post-compromise activities against those targets. While Goose Egg is just a simple launcher application, it's capable of spawning other applications with command line elevated privileges, which means it facilitates things like remote code execution, installing of backdoors, and moving laterally through compromised networks. Now, Row Tools is a legitimate recon framework for Microsoft Entra ID environments. It is used by both red teams and pen testing teams, as well as threat actors. And we actually observed Peach Sandstorm and Silk Typhoon, a Chinese nation-state actor, using Row Tools. Now, this tool is used after gaining initial authentication into Entra ID. So the threat actor that uses this tool has to have legitimate credentials first into Entra ID. This does not give them that access. They have to have that access. The threat actors will pass that token to the Rotary Recon module for auth and discovery. And here in our screenshot, we see what comes back. So this is the information that's returned from that auth and from the Road Recon, which can then be used for malicious follow-on activities and lateral movements. Next, we're going to talk about leveraging the clipboard to run malicious PowerShell commands. So we saw a phishing email that sent users to a page that looked like, hey, something went wrong. We need you to fix it. And it looks like after you click a few pop-ups, you'll be able to fix it. But what actually pops up is what's on the screen here, which is directions for you to copy a PowerShell command, open up PowerShell in Windows, paste that command, and then run it. I thought it was interesting to highlight here because here it's more social engineering than malicious, than anything malicious in the email, because basically the threat actors are just convincing their victims to run their code for them. All right, we're gonna go through 2 vulnerabilities. It's gonna be a little fast because vulnerabilities are very tech heavy, and here I just wanna highlight how they're being used. So 26169 is an elevation of privilege vulnerability and Windows error report processing. And this error report processing enables customers to notify Microsoft of like application faults and app-specific issues. And any threat actor that exploits this would gain system privileges and could, install malicious payloads and gain access to restricted data. And in June of 2024, we saw Black Basta ransomware affiliates use this vulnerability for initial access. 7971 is a type confusion vulnerability in the V8 JavaScript WebAssembly engine. That's a lot. It affects vulnerable Chromium versions and allows threat actors to gain remote code execution in sandbox Chromium rendered processes. Here, Microsoft actually saw North Korean threat actor Citrine Sleet exploiting this vulnerability in August of 2024. And after exploitation, they downloaded the FUD module rootkit. Now, the FUD module rootkit is a rootkit that establishes kernel-level access while evading detection. It was developed in 2021 and has used other vulnerabilities before. It is an exclusive North Korean tool, originally used by Diamond Sleet, but in August of 2024, we saw Citrine Sleet start to use it. It employs DKOM techniques to disrupt kernel-level mechanisms and performs kernel tampering that allows for read-write access to the kernel. All right, so we've gone through all of the threats, but all is not lost. We're gonna go through some high-level things that everybody can do to protect themselves from these threats. And it's gonna start with user education. I know as professionals, sometimes user education feels redundant, but it really is one of the best ways of preventing phishing and social engineering. Your company should not only teach users how to recognize phishing emails and how to identify and report malware infections, but they should also understand and recognize when there is unsolicited communications, like vishing and smishing, as well as being careful about what they share online, both personal and business. In addition to user education, things like phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, such as Microsoft Authenticator or FIDO2 security keys or certificate-based authentication, is a great secondary method for protecting here. And both of those should be combined with risk-based user policies, as well as continuous monitoring for suspicious and anomalous activities. We can defend against a lot of common malware techniques. First, by protecting the entry vectors, right? You should block Office applications from doing things like creating child processes and executing content and injecting code, and maybe you shouldn't have macros enabled, and you should block execution of obfuscated script and JavaScript that wants to execute additional content. And there's a lot here, but a lot of these are things that a lot of the security products already do. You just have to turn it on. And then for lateral movement, you should not allow any executable files running in your environment unless you trust them. There should be some form of prevalence, age, or trust list involved for those files to run in your environment. When we look at data exfiltration, there are 2 products that can really help here. First, the next generation firewall that is not only looking at things that are IOC-based, but actually providing signature-based intrusion detection, looking for specific patterns in telemetry. So not something that's going to be easily circumvented. And then we want a cloud access security broker. Now these prevent data downloads, set rules that enforce like data to be encrypted in the cloud environment, control risky IP addresses from connecting directly into your data. And in addition to these products. You should also have robust user access policies and data classification and handling policies. And of course, I wouldn't be at Microsoft if I didn't talk about Secure Future Initiative. Really, a lot of, like 90% of the things we talk about can really be prevented with the ideas behind Secure Future Initiative, or SFI. First, secure by design. Security should happen at the design phase. You should have secure development life cycles, and if your engineers do not know how to do that, you should be providing specialized training on secure coding practices. Secure by default. You should be shipping products that have all the security mechanisms turned on. I understand there's ease of use here, and some of these issues here with like user interactions and the user experience, but honestly, you should ship with all the security mechanisms turned off, and then leave the onus to the end user to turn those off, right? As a company providing that product, you should not be turning that off automatically. And of course, security operations. This is a cybersecurity conference. A lot of us work in the operations that are here. You want to have operations and controls and monitoring to detect, mitigate, and respond to cyber threats. I'm at time, but the last thing I'm going to leave you with is that a lot of this content in our briefing is available in the product if you have Defender Threat Intelligence or Threat Analytics. And for everybody that doesn't have our product, a portion of this is available on our public blog, which is the Microsoft Threat Intelligence blog. Thank you.